I think some of the appeal to going older and older is eventually you're like, we don't even know who this guy was, right? The more anonymous the author is,
Yeah.
the more you can just be like, I don't know, man, this just came into existence. This just, who are we to question this, right? And like, there's appeal there. Like, absolutely,
Hmm.
right? Like,
Hmm.
that's not a problem. That's like, oh, this is nice. I don't have to worry about who the hell wrote this. He just wrote a cool thing. And then 700 years of people uh, thought it was great. Um,
Yeah.
but like, I don't know that that makes it better conceptually, or that like we can't advance anything. Like, I think you
Right.
can take those old ideas and go, I have this radical new idea, and it might go, cool. The problem is, in our modern, in not just modern, but I just mean in the current moment, then I would go, well, I don't know about Dr. Sovryn, and if I, right, like it's attached to you, and therefore I
Yeah.
have this extra like interpretive layer,
Right.
whether or not your idea was brilliant or not. Um, and so I think that's the appeal of going older, is that it becomes more anonymous, and we can like um approach it with uh our own lens, our own intent, our own bias. Um,
Yeah. That's an interesting point you're bringing up because, and I don't know that I necessarily ever really considered that.
Power on.
Real-Time Sovryn is go.
Whoa, the Golden Stallion, the man of tomorrow, Sabzu, the rated R radio star, Dr. Brian Sovryn, here, but not alone. In fact, going to break a life rule here. And that life rule is most other people named Brian, I've always found to be assholes. Now, I'm not 100% sure that that rule will get broken tonight, but I am being joined by another Brian, a
mhm,
dear
mhm.
friend who I call and many call, and is actually quite the stage name for him. We call him BP, and that doesn't mean like his oil is leaking everywhere or anything like that. But BP, man, welcome to Real-Time Sovryn. It's
Thank
so
you.
cool to have you on. Yeah.
It's an honor to be here. I've listened to about 3 minutes to get ready for the podcast,
Now, so you've been on some of the Patreon only Q&As back when I was doing those. I got to
That's
pick
right.
that stuff up again at some point. Um, and brought in dynamite stuff as always, and always a good laugh as well. So I'm sure we're going to encounter many of those as we discuss things. Um,
Yeah, the fine line between, am I trolling the show, or am I
right,
contributing intellectual insight to the show?
exactly. Yeah, I love it when the lines get very, very muddy, very blurred.
That's where
Like
I
we
live.
yes, yeah, same. Yeah. It's like, wait, did Brian actually travel through time or not? Maybe. So
Yeah,
I'm with you. So, here's the thing. So, and you're a fellow New Hampshireite, or as I
correct.
call it, Ice Planet Zero. So we actually we get to hang out in person often enough, which is
Hmm.
always a joy. And I was debating on where I wanted to kind of start the conversation, but I've been wanting to have a lot of guests on. I've actually have other recordings of episodes I haven't released where I've had other guests on, and just get cool conversations out there with really cool people. Um, and so I was thinking of where to start off with this, and I think we should open up talking about some movies because that's something we've done. You and I, we've gone and caught a movie or two here and there whenever the ticket prices aren't some preposterous amount of money like they are now.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
and yeah, just insane. Um, but something that I don't think I got into too much or that I haven't discussed lately. Now, you are a massive Ghostbusters fan.
This is true. This is true. Can you see it on the wall behind me? Anyway, the
Yeah,
vinyl album is up over there.
hell yes. And I love that Super Nintendo like little schematic or whatever that is in the
Yep.
background.
Hmm.
That's
Hmm.
amazing.
Yeah, I think the rest of my
And the Lego
Ghostbusters stuff is
skeleton head.
downstairs. I
Yeah,
don't. I have
I
like
mean
a whole
you are,
shrine
and you
downstairs.
I love it. I love it. And you basically drive around in like in the Ecto One. So, like it's
Correct.
but anyway. um so I want to get your take on this
Okay.
because I feel like the Ghostbusters movies, pretty much everything after two, though maybe there's even something to be said about two, um, have been incredibly controversial. I mean, the 2016 one for varying reasons, but particularly Afterlife and Frozen Empire. In fact, I actually don't know a whole ton about really what the reaction was to Frozen Empire, so I haven't really talked about it. Afterlife I enjoyed quite a bit. You might have a different take on that, but I guess let's start it off and maybe work our way backwards. Let's start off with Frozen Empire. I mean, what was your thoughts on this? Or if you think naturally you should talk about Afterlife, go ahead. But what you got?
Frozen Empire, most recent one, was I would give it a middling rating.
Middling. All right.
Yes.
We usually
middling.
do out of 10 on this show.
Out of 10, I would give it a 5 to 6.
5 to 6.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
let's hear
it. So let me caveat my review by saying it is very popular to hate on things as a rhetorical position, right? And that's I do not I hate on that. So me disliking this is not a lazy review.
Right. You're not coming from the position, I just hate everything new. Like, that's not you.
Correct.
Right.
I am perfectly fine with new content. That said, Frozen Empire is entirely mediocre because they've lost the point of the series. And that's why, like, I'm a fan of number 2. I'm a fan of the 2016 Ghostbusters. I think they understood.
Interesting.
They understood the assignment, right? Maybe they did something a little different, but they understood the assignment and they did what the core idea is of the series. And that,
what would you say is the core idea? Yeah.
Somebody else, a friend of mine, phrased it this way, and I think he hit the nail on the head. It's sardonic adults dealing with the horror of death, the unknown, the supernatural.
Sardonic, what a wonderful word.
Yeah, that's the core of what Ghostbusters is and what made it amazing. I think also another piece is deep respect and knowledge of the occult. Right? Not that they're concerned with this must be true to, Babylonian gods or something, but that they know their source material and they're playing with pieces of that, with that knowledge.
Let me just touch on that for 1 second, because the first film, there's what is basically a throwaway line in it that I don't think most people knew was even a thing until you fast forward 20, 25 years later and Ancient Aliens does a whole episode about it. And that being the Tunguska event of 1909. Now, it was actually 1907. They got the year wrong in the movie. But Ray mentions it. Now, what that is, that's the event where, people think a UFO came through this, the woods in Russia or in the USSR. It wasn't the USSR at the time, but in Russia, we'll just say that way. And just leveled all these trees and everything. And it's an insane thing. And so just to say that they have a deep cut knowledge of things. Oh yeah, you're totally right about that. As far as the occult or the strange. Go ahead.
Yeah, right. And I think Zool is actually a reference to a famous paranormal event as well, that he just took that name and in any case.
Sure.
So that's a big piece of it. The other piece is just the theme of there's almost you could almost say a Kafka-esque element where it's we know ghosts exist. There's afterlife. All of these things are now scientifically proven to be true. What do you do with this profound knowledge? We clean up ghosts.
Right.
We got a job to do, man. We do a job. We have a job to do. And you're like, what? Right? That's
Yeah.
like Kafka-esque, where you're like, dude, do you not understand what we're dealing with here? And they're like, gotta make a buck. Gotta
Yeah.
make a buck. Um, and so all of that is to say that the newest Frozen Empire, um, I think that they're aware of some of those elements, but they don't quite stay true to them. And that in Frozen Empire, the best stuff for me was you get to see the librarian, what, Patton Oswalt, right? Basically the
Yeah.
inheritor of Ray Stanza's character of just being a nerd for the occult. You have James Acaster, who's one of my favorite comedians right now, right? So that's why
Okay.
I'm like, I'm not hating on this. I absolutely love James Acaster and was over the moon, so pumped that he was going to be in this movie, right? And his
Right.
performance is amazing, but they don't let him be Venkman or Egon. He's a secondary character. Um,
Nah.
and Paul Rudd maybe Paul Rudd is a bit of a Pete Venkman or something, right? But like you have those characters in there. You're like, this is the cast we want to see. And instead, we're belaboring um uh the family drama that what's his face? Jason Reitman was like, I want to
Mhm.
do something about my strained relationship with my father. Okay, that's cool, dude.
Right.
Write that script. Why is that a Ghostbusters script? Well, because my dad
Nah.
directed Ghostbusters.
Yeah. Right.
I have all the love for it needing to work through our relationships with people and art as expression and all of that. Like, man, I
Yeah.
get it. Like, but you right, the message needs to match the like other themes involved. And
Mhm.
so I was like, okay, fine. We had Afterlife, which was a hot pile of diarrhea in a paper bag. And then we got,
Wow.
I'm like, okay, fine. Look, it made its money. They're gonna let us get back to New York and doing what the series was meant to do. So I went in going, I'm gonna give them another chance because I love these movies. And
Mhm.
then
Mhm.
they and so I'm sitting down and watch it, and they're like, "Oh, actually, all these characters are still here, including like characters that nobody cares about." But they're like, "Oh yeah, podcast. He's here, because he's pretending to be at space camp because well, people need to see that character again." And you're like,
Mhm.
"But he contributes nothing. This isn't this
Mhm.
is
Mhm.
this has nothing thematically. There's nothing he's contributing to this plot. It's like,
Right. Well, let me ask you this. I mean,
okay,
do you think part of the issue might be, I mean, talking about, kind of losing the message. I mean, you said sardonic adults earlier as part of the core theme. Do you think part of the problem is that like it's focusing on kids,
yeah,
as the main characters? Yeah. I would agree with that. I mean,
absolutely,
like I think that's the weakest part of these, and they're really both. Even though there's kind of a flip flopping of the creative team, like you had Jason Reitman writing and directing the first one. Gil Keenan ended up directing this one, but Gil Keenan worked on Afterlife as well, and Jason Reitman was still a writer on this one. However, that all worked out. So I guess it's not surprising that for you, it was lightning striking twice and not in a good way. Uh, so
yeah,
go ahead. Yeah.
yeah. I had just right. There was like all these moments of false hope in
Right.
Frozen Empire where we'd get Patton Oswalt. And I'm like, yeah, more of him. And they're like, nope, this is a one-off scene. And then we would
Mm,
get James Acaster, and it would be like, yes, more. No, no.
right.
And then like the strained love interest thing going on, and what's his face? Wolfhard or whatever the fuck his name is, right?
Mhm.
Um, his character does nothing the entire movie. He's there just to collect a paycheck because all he does is a series of scenes where he's dealing with Slimer. And we all know it's Slimer. There's
Right.
no reveal. There's no right? It's a whole sea-level storyline, so they can have one line at the end of the movie where he goes, I know that guy. What?
Yeah.
What?
Like
How
just
did
kind of
that?
stupid fan service.
Yeah,
Hmm.
and like that should have hit the editor's room floor, right? They should have cut that out. And if they cut that out, it would be like, wow, this character isn't even in the movie. He would literally have not been in that movie. And you're like, yeah,
Right.
he shouldn't be. But unfortunately, I'm sure there's a contract that says, hey man, you paid this guy $5 million. He needs to be in at least this much of the movie. You can't edit him out of the movie. But
Yeah.
like they should have. They should have. Who cares? Give me more of these other characters who actually are appropriate to the genre.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. So Frozen Empire, I'm still kind of holding out on that. Um, I mean, I did like Afterlife. I don't think that means that I necessarily like Frozen Empire. But
Hmm.
when I think about Afterlife a little bit more, part of it is I like a lot of the moments, and it's not necessarily the film because I couldn't give a rat's ass about Paul Rudd in any given form.
Fair.
Whether that's
Okay.
whether that's Ant-Man or anything he was doing back in the day, I don't know. He actually kind of annoys me. Um,
Okay.
but
Agree to
you know,
disagree.
yeah, sure, sure. No, that's fair.
Yeah.
So on the other hand, I mean, like the opening shot for Afterlife to me was so great with all you're just seeing the proton pack just charge right up into the sky, and there's this massive ripple. And to this day, I still want like a huge mural of that on my wall somewhere, of
Hmm.
just Egon just blasting into the sky. I thought Olivia Wilde as coming back as Zool was one of the better moves you could make. But I hear you. Like neither of these films are going to compare to one and two. Um, and I think two is a great movie. I still don't exactly understand the hate towards that film
I
that
don't
it still
understand
gets.
it.
Yeah,
No idea.
yeah. I mean, the dancing toasters, all of that shit is great.
Yes.
Um, I mean, Cheech Marin saying, better late than never with the Titanic coming. I mean, these aren't just moments. This is great comedy.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
yeah. Um, so I'm baffled by that. I think they're the same people that just don't like RoboCop 2, which I also don't understand why anyone would say such a thing. But uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
now I will say, and I want to touch on this. Okay, the 2016 Ghostbusters. Now you defend that,
Hmm.
and that's okay. And I just like I want to hear it. I want to like how did that carry on the spirit of Ghostbusters?
Uh, it dealt with it had the
Well, it
correct
is
themes,
wacky for sure.
right?
Hmm. Hmm.
It's like they were people dealing with the supernatural and also being um ironically detached from it.
Right. Sure.
And that's the humor, right? That's what makes it work. Great characters, great moments. For me, I think, um, for me, the weak component of that movie was uh, they didn't like the supernatural element, I think, was not as well developed. So for me, the
Hmm.
piece
Hmm.
that needed a little more oomph was that thread of the plot line of just like what really is this guy up to? What is he doing? And how does this make sense in his own magical worldview, right?
Right.
And and I think that could have been enhanced with I'm blanking on character names. But
Sure. Yeah, I wouldn't be able to tell you on these ones.
um but one of the characters she joins and she's like she works the subway, right? And she knows like the history of the Undercity. Like that's a big thing she
Hmm.
says. She's like, "Oh, I know all about this obscure history of the whole thing." And you're like,
Right.
okay, cool. So they're setting up that she's the missing piece to the knowledge they don't have to their science knowledge. And you're expecting her
Right.
to fill in the gaps of what they knew, and then you would have this full picture of the conspiracy, what's really been going on,
Hmm.
right? Like when they realize that Ivo Shandor, right, has been doing these things in the building, and it was a ritual site, right? And it's like, oh, right, they set that up, but then she doesn't really play a part. She's just the fourth member, right? She's just
Right.
helping out, and she's great, and I love her character, right? But they don't utilize what she's bringing to the team. And I think that what she should have brought to the team was building out that picture of like, what is this supernatural conspiracy? And
Right.
then that would have enhanced the final moments of then going, okay, great, how do we deal with this supernatural threat? Right. And
Yeah.
solve that problem.
Yeah. Yeah. I think so. For me, with the 2016 Ghostbusters, it wasn't so much. It seemed like a lot of people. Well, I know what a lot of people had issues with. Obviously, they didn't enjoy the gender swap, or
Yeah, well, they can eat my ass.
and a fine ass it is.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, right on. I've helped you train that thing. Anyway, so, whatever that means. So I know that people have a problem with that, but some people who try to be a little more intelligent about it say the issue was the script. I didn't really have an issue with the script. Like I didn't necessarily think there was a problem with that. I will say, and this has zero to do with the fact that they're women, has zero to do with what their lineage may be or anything along those lines. I just didn't think it was a strong cast. The cast didn't grab me. And what they could have done to put that cast over, in my opinion, would be one of the classic tricks to do in any kind of franchise, is to create the antithesis team. Like any kind of team franchise, if you want to get people to take your good guys or gals in this case, if you want them to take you seriously, bring in the antithesis, bring in the Psycho Rangers to take on the Power Rangers, or bring in the Green Ranger to kick the shit out of all of them. You know what I mean? Like you got to bring in that antithesis. And if they did that in that movie, I think there would have been a lot less complaints. I think we would have bought the heroes more, because you understand that, that the Ghostbusters are, they are what they are. And when you have that well, I don't know what that antithesis would look like, but I think you could have done something really cool with that. And the franchise is yet to do that. And I don't know why. Other than maybe the cartoon might have played with that, but that's because J. Michael Straczynski's a genius.
Yeah.
So,
yes.
Right.
Yes.
Which did you like the real Ghostbusters back in the day?
Yeah.
Yeah. Phenomenal.
Of course. Yeah. It's
absolutely.
It's top notch. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
My only issue with the script is what I already said about underutilizing, some plot elements that were there that I think they could have massaged that to something more powerful.
I agree with that. Yeah.
And it's an interesting thought to me, like what you made me think of them being like, where's the antagonizing team for them to be contrasted against? And like they inserted the scene where they read comments on their YouTube videos, like reading actual comments people made about the trailer to the movie, right? They like reshot and added that in. And you're like, yeah, the antithesis they're playing against are these shit fans. That was
right.
Contrasting these very funny women against troglodytes, in their basements. And you're like, do I want to spend time with this guy he needs to bathe more often, but he loves the original Ghostbusters so much that he'll hate any other movie? Wow, what a loyalty that guy has. And you're like, I could hang out with him, or I could hang out with these very funny women. And apparently there's a contingent of people who are like, yeah, let's go hang out with the smelly man in his basement because he loves one movie so much. And he doesn't understand, he doesn't have enough intelligence to love anything else. All he knows is that if he's loyal to this one thing and hates everything else, there are people who will go, good for you.
Yeah.
Good for you.
Yeah. No, I hear it. I hear it. And I mean, the other part of it to me is that, for good reason, like the Ghost, especially the first two, and particularly the first one, is just this revered film, is like one of those near perfect, if not perfect, movies and certainly comedies ever made. And the first one definitely deserves that distinction. But like, I'm always amazed at how many people never realize like the insane sexual overtones that happen at the end of that movie. In fact, like it's nearly a sexual ritual, to the point that the Ghostbusters are basically blowing their loads all over Zool. And like the Stay Puft Marshmallow, and after all this happens, after this, this giant orgasm, on a skyscraper in New York City happens, the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man blows up, and like, there's just white stuff covering everybody in the city. I mean, like it's a massive sexual ritual, and but these people are so goddamn blind because they're in their basement, I don't know, whacking off too much or something, and somehow they missed it. I don't, they're too busy seeing their own going all over the screen. They didn't notice what was happening on the screen.
Yeah.
But
yeah. Excellent point.
So
excellent point.
Yeah. And folks, we're going to get into some mysticism here in a few minutes, but but before we do that, so because I want to do a nice natural lead into this stuff.
Okay.
I don't think, if you're good with do you have any other comments on Ghostbusters? Or are you good?
I mean, I could probably rant at great length, but I think we've covered the important stuff. Right.
With Stay Puft Marshmallows everywhere.
Yeah, so, I think that's a great, that wraps it all up.
Yeah. All right. So another franchise that I know you're a huge fan of, as am I, would be Indiana Jones. Now, I don't think you and I have had the opportunity to really talk about Indy 5. Is it? Yeah, it's 5. Yeah,
I think it's
Dial of Destiny. Of course, written and directed by James Mangold, who was supposed to do a Star Wars movie, but I don't think that's happening anymore. We'll see. But give me your thoughts. I mean, I have talked about this on the I did review it on the show, and it wasn't a favorable review. But I'm fine if you have a differing opinion. I mean, what did you think about Dial of Destiny?
It was acceptable. I'd put it like
acceptable. Okay.
I would give it a 7. Far worse cinema you could watch.
7. So far, but that's not saying much, BP. It's like those far worse things you could watch. Well, sure. Okay, a 7. All right.
Yeah, I just, we got more Indiana Jones. That's always going to be a good thing.
Sure. Well, all right. Let me say quickly, that first 20 minutes. I know people felt like there was some uncanny valley there with the younger Indiana Jones and his older voice and all that stuff, and I get that, but like that was still like some classic indie shit going on. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, I think that for the most part, the movie understood the assignment. They had a lot of indie classic material, and yeah, I like all cinema post Raiders of the Lost Ark is is a downgrade, right? That was the high point in American cinema of all time for me. So the fact that we got more of him is great. Harrison Ford's a national treasure.
Sure, no disagreement there.
Yeah, so it's just kind of like, what can you say about it that's bad, I guess? It's just, there's a lot less. For me, there were a few elements, again, of extraneous characters, underdeveloped characters, things like that I think in a earlier age, we wouldn't have, when we don't need 3-hour-long movies, would have been cut out of the movie. Spielberg in his heyday would have just been like, yeah, this is silly, or this isn't working, or this isn't interesting. Right. He would have just cut it out, right? We just don't do that anymore in the era of 3-hour Marvel movies and everything else, right? Like, no content can be removed anymore. I don't know what's causing that. Is it the studio? Is it contracts lock people into, right? Like, I don't know where it's coming from. But like, those were my issues with it. Were just things that I think could have been cut and you could have tightened up the movie.
Sure.
And it gets to like for me, and maybe this is just a me thing, right? But like we've lost, or maybe I'm just getting more savvy. Maybe that's what it is. I'll talk myself up. Maybe I'm just getting smarter. Um,
Right.
but it used to be that foreshadowing and exposition were much more hidden, right? We were much more craftful in hiding all of that,
Yes.
integrating that into the narrative, and you don't realize you're getting information that's going to be important later. And um,
Mm-hmm.
the Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, some of its weak points are when they're doing exposition or they're doing foreshadowing, and you're like, to me, I'm like, they're shining a big spotlight on it, and I'm like, oh, okay, so later that's gonna be a
Yeah.
thing later. Great.
Yeah. So they were
Um,
too on the nose. Like that was part of the issue. I got you.
right, right. You know, they like, yeah, they need to be a little less what's the word I want? They're lamp shading it too much, or they're like,
Right.
you know, they don't think you're gonna pick up on that detail. Um, and as opposed to the thing that is coming into my mind is the movie They Clone Tyrone. Did you see that movie?
I don't think I've seen that.
Okay.
Wow.
In
I
that
don't get to say that
movie,
often, but go ahead.
yeah. In that movie, there's tons and tons of foreshadowing exposition information that you think is just banter, that you, right, like they
Right.
hide it so well. And then you get to the end of that movie and you're like, oh my God, they said that
Mm,
in the first quarter of this movie, and that was actually information.
right.
Like that movie, one of the reasons I enjoyed that movie is because it wasn't just here's information for you, Mr. Viewer. Hold on to
Mm-hmm.
that. Here,
Right.
let's highlight this for you. You got that, dum dum? Great. Um, and so that like so there are people who can still write, direct, edit with that level of skill. It's still out there. But Hollywood, or at least big stuff, either can't do it or they're purposefully dumbing it down, right? And how cynical am I? It was where I land on right
Right.
those options.
Yeah,
Um,
I worry about that because, like I'm reminded of Gene Roddenberry now. Of course, he kind of rewrote his own history, but whatever. We'll excuse that for the moment. Um, but
like
where
all
he
good
would
science
say,
fiction writers,
yes,
okay? L. Ron Hubbard did the same, okay?
exactly. He was an admiral. What are you talking about? So, uh, but Gene Roddenberry, kind of famously said that his idea for Star Trek, of course, he'd say wagon train to the stars, but he said his real idea for Star Trek was that he didn't want to treat the viewer like an idiot. They had the idea that the person on the other side of the screen was intelligent. And I think he kicked that off because there is a time frame where, and especially with granted movies were kind of dire and serious, a little too serious maybe in the 70s. But for a while there, yeah, like stuff was really, really intellectual. And maybe we've just gone backwards to where like no, like Hollywood doesn't think the person on the other side of the screen is intelligent anymore. Yeah, I agree with you. And something else, you bring up a movie like that's kind of clever. Now, granted, this one is more from like the late 90s, early aughts. So back when, maybe on a larger scale or more broadly, movies were better on average. I don't know. I mean, I think we have a real problem that just too many of them get made. I mean, it's fucking insane.
Yeah, also that.
But there's a classic movie with Kevin Bacon, though most people probably won't remember it for Kevin Bacon, but it's called Wild Things. It also had Denise Richards, Nev Campbell. It was a what I guess what people would call like an erotic thriller. But it was a theatrical film. It was really, really good. And people have to get over the fact that like stop thinking of it as a skin flick, because what it does is it doesn't like it's a murder mystery. It's a thriller, so there's kind of a murder mystery going on,
Mm-hmm.
and you don't really know a lot of what's going on. But then during the credits, they show you all the scenes explaining what was happening throughout the film, and I just thought that was genius, and I've never seen another movie do it. Where like at the end, I mean, even Bill Murray's even in this, just to attach it to Ghostbusters if we wanted. But Bill Murray's in the movie; he's great. Um, and you see how all of this actually worked, and then you just want to watch the movie again. And I don't know why more people don't give us that, where at the end you could see moments that start to explain everything. Not that I think that'd be a fit for an Indiana Jones movie, but yeah, I agree that there appears to be a dumbing down in Hollywood overall.
Yeah, it's right. Either that or just a general loss of artistry. Right.
Right.
The fine craft. Right. It's one or the other, probably both.
Yeah, maybe a bit of both. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that to me, right, the boogeyman in the corner amongst these different things is the M. Night Shyamalan stuff, where the entire movie hinges on one reveal, one piece of information, right? And to me, that convince a bunch of people, look how clever you can be, right? And then it became stupid, and then we went, no more clever movies. We're being too clever, and to me, right, like those movies, I've seen a few of his films, and I go, if the movie isn't worth watching, if you tell me this one piece of information, that's a shit movie.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Like that was maybe not shit, but a 4 out of 10 movie.
Yeah.
Right? Where like you could be like, oh, hey, you want to watch Raiders of the Lost Ark? Yeah, at the end he gets the Ark. Oh, well, I can't see the movie now. You'd be like, absolutely not, man. That movie's incredible. It doesn't matter.
Yes. It's the ride.
Matter. It's the ride.
Yeah.
And so it's like, right, like there's all these extreme ends of the spectrum. Are we too dumb, or are we so clever that one piece of information ruins the movie? Right? And you're like, let's go back to just being reasonably intelligent in our craft here. Like that's so if anyone's ever like, oh, this movie, but I don't want to give you any spoilers, and I'm like, if a spoiler genuinely ruins this movie, then I probably don't want to see it.
It's right. No, I'm with you on that. Like if it's all about that one hook, I mean, for me, I like a movie that that kind of forces me to see it more than once. I mean, that's kind of what I was saying with Wild Things. Now that might be a me thing, because apparently there are plenty of people who really just watch a movie once and then they move on with their life. That kind of blows my mind. But maybe it's because there are so many movies right now, and you like can't even imagine watching something more than once. I don't know. But yeah, I'm with you on that. Like that. Yeah, because I don't own a single M. Night Shyamalan film. And you of few people have actually seen my collection, and
it's extensive.
Yeah. You need a wide angle lens, just like other things for me. So and
I can confirm that as well.
Right. Come on, locker rooms, things happen. All right, So yeah, I don't own a single M. Night Shyamalan film, and I never have any intention to, because I think that's like a shoddy trick that doesn't do anything for me,
Yeah.
Like, okay, I get it with the movie Signs, but then, or The Sixth Sense, and I don't know, like, I'm glad that the Scary Movie series was able to make parodies of all that, thankfully, but otherwise I just don't care,
Yeah, what good is a movie?
So,
right.
Go ahead.
What good is a movie you can watch once, right? Yeah, like that's a great. I think that sums it up. Of like an M. Night Shyamalan movie, maybe twice, I guess. Once you know the reveal, you watch it again to go, these idiots, and then you're like,
yeah, right.
That's it.
Yeah, All right, you know what? Okay, I do want to get back to Indy on this, but
Okay.
you just made me think. Have you ever seen Vanilla Sky with Tom Cruise?
Oh gosh. I don't know
Maybe
if I've
not.
actually seen that movie.
Okay, then we're not going to talk about it.
Okay. Okay. Sorry. I'm like, I
That's all
know
right.
of
That's all
it,
right.
but I don't think I've seen it.
All right, that's your homework.
Okay. I'm
You
writing
can
that
come
down.
back on.
Yeah.
But I mean, I will do the and I mean this might color it, but whatever. I will do you the favor of letting you know, like I hate this movie, but
Okay.
but you should watch it.
Okay.
And I want to hear your take on that. Just consider it in the context of what we're talking about. So
Understood.
yeah, okay. Um, so with Indiana Jones, now part of my okay, I had two issues with this movie. I mean, one of them, I don't know, what was her name? Phoebe
Hmm.
Walker something. She's fine. I just I needed somebody more in that role. Like, especially when you're putting this person up against Mads Mikkelsen, you've got Antonio Banderas of all things in it, which he was. I enjoyed him in the movie. I really needed a character that could just try to, and it's fine that it's female, but that could just try to pull off the panache of Harrison Ford. Like if you're going to be somehow the replacement or the progeny. I mean, this is the same thing, and I know you also like Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, which I kept from calling it Kingdom of the Crystal Skull fucking, but I know you like that film, okay?
I
But it
would
was the
give that
same
one
deal.
I would give that one like a 7. Like I would rate that
Okay,
equivalent to Dial of Destiny.
okay, no, that's fair. I would actually put them in similar territory. Um, But Shia LaBeouf, I didn't think like he didn't have it. And I know
No.
Spielberg loved him for a time, but he didn't have it, and
No.
that has nothing to do with the swinging with the monkey scenes. Like he just you've got to give me somebody who can live up to Harrison Ford, and I believe those people are out there.
Yeah, I think
But
she got closer than Shia LaBeouf did. I will
oh
say
yeah, sure,
that.
yes, yep, I agree, I agree.
She's come the closest of anybody, so
Right,
it points to her for
yep,
sure. Um, yeah, but
yeah.
I hear what you're saying. You needed her to be a little more on Indy's level of charisma.
Yeah. Just I just need presence. I'm not even saying you have to write her like a guy. I'm not saying you have to write her like Indiana Jones. I just need presence. I need to I need to be drawn in like I am with Harrison Ford. Like I want to like be so enamored by the character that like, yes, I actually do want to know the origin story of how you got that scar on your chin. You know what I mean? Like you're just that interesting of a damn person. And it wasn't there. But did you ever play Indiana Jones and the Fate of Atlantis?
Golly, that's
The,
long ago.
yeah, I mean that's ancient. Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
gonna get that
So
on Steam to replay that, I think.
yeah. Do so, or just watch the YouTube video. Like that's a totally valid thing to do. Um, I guess the point I'm bringing up with that is I think, as well as the novels and comics, like there are great Indiana Jones stories that have already been told. Like it's not like it's over. You know
Yep.
what I mean? It's not like there are, oh well, this character's just kind of done. No. There have been many, 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 many great stories. And unfortunately, this is the other thing is that Hollywood just doesn't want to. They don't seem to want to bring any kind of prior IP like that to life. I mean, make even when they make movies based on books, especially lately, I actually get kind of pissed off about it. Not because like I don't need a movie to be exactly like the book, but it's clearly the director, writer just wanted to make whatever dumbass movie they wanted to make. And they're just using the book as a vehicle,
Yep.
like it's a marketing vehicle, and that's all that it
Yep.
is.
Yep.
Um, I'll give this to Dial of Destiny. I don't think it was that. I don't think it was one of those cases where James Mangold wanted to make,
Yes.
just whatever dumbass movie he wanted to make. He actually cared. I'll give him that much.
Yes, I
I
would
don't know
agree
how
with
much more
you.
I want to give him. Okay,
Yes.
fair. So speaking of all this,
Hmm.
okay, of Indiana Jones, Ghostbusters. Now you've been watching this stuff since you were how old? As far back as you can remember?
Oh God, yeah, yeah. Like earliest memories are
Right.
definitely involve watching one of those two movies.
Sure.
Yeah, the
So these,
trifecta to complete it so everybody knows the full picture of me
please.
is Back to the Future
Ah,
is the other piece of that triangle.
okay. Is that at the top of the pyramid or one of the like sides?
It depends. It rotates with like my mood, you know, which actor is most problematic at the moment, right? Will like cause the
Ah,
triangle to move, right?
right.
You know, that's yeah, so it's hard, right?
Okay.
It's a trinity, you know, and
Yeah.
all is one and yet all our three are separate and
Everything comes in threes. So,
yeah,
all right. So that's a great mix. And I would love to talk at some point. We're going to have that conversation around Back to the Future as well. I
sure.
certainly love those movies as also. And even the cartoon was a lot of fun.
Hmm.
Um, but so myself also, I've been watching I can't remember when I didn't see Ghostbusters. I can't remember when I didn't see Indiana Jones.
Hmm.
Like it's just always there. It's always
Yes.
been there for me as well. Now, you and I share something else. Not in the locker room in this case, but we share something else. Uh, and that is and it's not something that I've been super well known for most of my recording career, um but it's something that's come to fore over the past few years. But you and I share an interest in mysticism, and
Hmm.
and 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 interest might even be far too gentle a term, but because I also live it. I don't want to speak for you, but would you say like what got you into mysticism overall? Do you think seeing things at such a young age like Ghostbusters just replete with the occult, or Indiana Jones replete with the occult, like unavoidably so?
Hmm.
um do you think that this led you down the road? How did you get into mysticism?
Um, I think they maybe put in like a predisposition to those ideas.
Sure.
Um, I think what got me like learning about it, like more in a more like I'm voraciously curious about like most anything. You know, I'm not an
Right.
expert in all these
Okay.
things. But like I like learning about everything. So that's like a first thing, right? Anything catches my interest, I'm
Yeah,
gonna
sure.
go learn about it. Um, and I think it came from, and again, actually, it does feed into those films, was like interest in science.
Hmm.
Right? A strong element of like Ghostbusters is like science is exists in the same universe as the
Right.
occult. Um, and um for me, I think it was like learning about science, learning about the natural world, learning about history. Eventually, if you're like, pick any branch of science, go ahead and pick one, right? But you like start following that back, right? Me being curious. First, you kind of go, what's the current state of physics? And you're like, okay, here's Einstein, and here's, you know, all these different things. And you're like, well, why was that a big deal, right? Like the next question. Okay, well, before Einstein, we had, you know, Newtonian physics. And you go, oh, tell me about that. And you go, you know,
Yeah.
learn about that. And you're like, oh, well, why was this a big deal? You know, well, he invented calculus and, you know, laws of motion and this, that, and the other thing. Oh, well, why was that a big deal? Oh, well, go read about natural philosophy and what he was building off of, right? And you know, and like also, I think maybe early on I didn't know this, right? They don't talk about it as much, right? But like Newton was a huge occultist and alchemist
Oh yeah.
and right. And so he was reading all of that stuff, and to him, the occult and the physics were one and the same, right? He was trying
Right.
to understand laws of motion as much as he was trying to understand what gold was made out of, right? He was trying to quantify all of these things. He
Yeah.
approached them all with the same level of interest. Um, and so you just keep following that back, and eventually you I mean, you don't even have to go that far back for the threads to merge, right? For you to be
Hmm.
talking about one and the same, right? And then you go over and you're like, go look at chemistry, and you follow that far enough back, right? And you get into like iodochemistry and herbalism and early metallurgy, which just goes back into alchemy and all of these, you like go from science to proto-science to natural philosophy, which is also now just mysticism, right? Like
Hmm.
all these threads you overlap and are intermixed. So anytime I was interested in one thing, I just followed it back until I was like, oh, here I am again, and back in the same
Right. You
building.
Yeah, exactly. So like any branch of science you were looking at, you just keep going back until you get to like the Enlightenment figures and whoever happened to start perhaps or really kick off that branch of science. And then you realize, well, wait, all these guys shared this in common. Why were they all hanging out together? And suddenly you run into alchemy, and then that just keeps going back. Yeah, I really dig that path. Um, and because it does, I'm reminded of, not that I'm necessarily a fan of this guy, but I'm reminded of, Neil deGrasse Tyson talking about why Newton was the greatest scientist and why he wishes there were more Newtons and, less of like the modern type of scientist. And that was because not that Newton like had all the knowledge or had all the facts, but because he had the mentality to be able to figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
Like that was it, was just his ability to figure something out was so incredible. But I don't think you can't, and I agree with him on that. And I don't think you can really like, you can't help but look at that like, wait, yeah, how did he exactly figure that out? And then realize that, wait, well, so what were his interests? What was he going through every day? Like what was his lounge reading and everything? And when you find out that that's a bunch of, occult texts and the Emerald Tablet and all whatever his interpretations were of the book of Daniel or something, it gets pretty wild, and you can't help but look at that. I agree with you. You can't, even as a young person, you can't help but look at that and go, um, well, there must be something here. Like if it got him
Yeah,
to help them figure things out.
yeah, right. Like, yeah, and to be like, how am I gonna learn how to think smarter? And to be like, I'm going to
Right.
limit what I know. And you're like, no, no, do the opposite. Do the opposite. Go read
Yeah.
more things. Like this pops into my head of they had what for some reason what pops into my head is a total tangent, right? Is they had some super high up of the United States military was being grilled by Congress about the libraries that they have on United States naval ships and the books that are
Hmm.
in those. And one of them was like the like Communist Manifesto or something, right? And they're like, how could you
Right.
have Americans reading this? And he just straight up goes, how are my soldiers supposed to understand the rest of the world and the people they might encounter or fight by never reading anything about them? And he just
Right.
straight up is just saying this to these morons, right? And it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, man, like it's not just a know thy enemy thing. It's like you gotta learn other ways of thinking to
Yes.
be a better thinker. Um,
Yeah. I mean, even, it's similar to actually, a military concept is, or quote that, when I was in that they bantied about a lot was because, some of us, like we had to learn Farsi, and depending upon where you're deployed. And, they'd always pull out this nugget, this quote that says, when you learn another language, you gain another soul. And what they really mean by that is you literally learn a new way of thinking. And I think philosophy itself is also a language. And
mm-hmm,
so,
mm-hmm.
even if you don't agree with communism, like when you learn about it, you actually do in effect learn a different way of thinking. You learn a different language. And how that could be harmful to the human mind, uh, I don't see how. Unless you're just somebody that's wishy-washy, but then you're already going to follow whatever was order of the day anyway. But
Yeah,
um,
right. Yeah. How
yeah,
weak-willed are you that
yeah,
introducing a new
exactly.
idea is going to, yeah, like just
Yeah,
totally change what you believe, I guess, or like
yeah.
your who you are.
Well, I think it's hilarious that Congress is like terrified of books. That always gives me a good chuckle.
Yeah,
Like,
it's a
how
hilarious.
Nazi of you.
Yes, it's amazing on so many levels. So many
Right,
levels. Yeah.
right.
Yeah, like just yeah, and so that I think my voraciousness for like learning and reading every time you find a new thread, it's like,
Mhm.
what, well, tell me more about that. Tell me more about this. And you go read about some other place in the world, some other way people think, and you might go, that's insane. No, thank you. And
Right.
now you know, now you've got
Yeah.
this other, you won't go down that path again.
Right. You know what to avoid. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So now, I mean, just to give like, kind of more broad anonymous background on you. I mean, so you are a man of the stage, an impressive man of the stage at that. But you are also, I mean, what were you schooled as? Can I call you an engineer, or what is a
That
better term
that
for
is
you?
that's the word they did put on the degree that I got.
That's what they
Yes.
put on.
Uh
It's an
uh
engineer.
that's
Right.
what yes, chemical engineering by training. Um with
Mhm.
a focus in biotechnology. I did a
Right.
biotechnology degree, and then I did a chemical engineering degree with a biotechnology focus. So it sort of doubled up on that one. So
Exactly.
that is
So
my
this
my
interest in
academic
science,
background.
bingo. Yeah. So your interest in science, it literally is academic in that sense. But I mean, this isn't just armchair shit. Like, no, this is who you are. This is,
Yes.
like you are absolutely trained and schooled in this. So, and I think that's important to get out there. Um, do so let me ask you this. As far as that mysticism, has there been anything in particular that you've learned about, even like a particular figure, um, that's really spoke to you? And I don't mean like in the middle of the night, in some kind of wet dream, but like, that like you really felt like, okay, no, this guy's onto something, or this gal's onto something. I mean, like who's really spoken to you?
So, hmm, one person that pops into head, and maybe it's because like the copy of his book is right up here,
Yeah, you
is
have quite an occult collection, I must say. I've seen your bookshelves.
I've got, well, yeah, I have like a mini library on many topics. Like there's a science
Yes.
shelf. So yeah, I've got a lot.
Yep.
I have diverse interests, but um, Agrippa, Henry Cornelius, Agrippa.
Ah, yes.
The reason that I think he's cool, I guess, right? The
Hmm.
thing that, is he took what at the time was just diverse, not, I don't mean this in an insulting way, but like folklore, right? Like
Hmm.
all
Hmm.
this diverse knowledge, mystic knowledge, occult knowledge, traditions, all of this
Yep.
stuff. And he like made I don't know if he was, it's hard to say the first, right? But he made a first major effort to like systematize everything,
Yeah.
try to take it
Yeah.
all in and put everything into categories. He tried to find all the correspondences of like, everybody says this herb is good for this thing. Hey, wait a minute. That blossoms in this season, and this is the sign that is in the sky in that season. And oh, that would make sense because it's a fire sign. And right, and he like did this really big thing, and like the thing that appeals to me is, and I maybe this is playing to like the scientific side of me, of like categorization and systemization is really cool. And
Hmm.
so like I really appreciate what he did, right? Like in the same way that we talk about like um early periodic tables with Mendel and
Yes.
so on, of them finding the patterns and then going, I can predict the next set of elements. We have a missing element here, right? Because he found the pattern, right?
Yeah.
And like at the same time, people like Agrippa were going, well, wait, shouldn't there be an herb in this season that cures this thing because the correspondent says we need that here? What is that? And he's like, he's doing the same thing in the occult
Yes.
field, right? And
Yes.
and so like that, I appreciate that about him. Um
Yeah. I
and
mean, Go ahead.
Oh, just that's like a motivation be to be like, yeah, like this is a worthwhile endeavor to like collect all this information in my head, right?
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, 3 books of occult philosophy, you can't overstate how important those works are for, mysticism and occultism in general. Like, I mean, it not only like collected it, and I agree with you. Like, it's amazing how well it collated and kind of systematized it a bit. And there's so many branches that came out of that tree. I mean, there's just so many,
Yeah.
and I personally like appreciate how much respect he gave to Kabbalah. Like I'm totally, I mean, because Kabbalah and Hermeticism and, basically Neoplatonism, I mean, those are like the big things, is kind of his big three in those books. But if he didn't do that, I can't even imagine how much knowledge would never have survived. I mean,
Yes.
part of what's so powerful about it, whether he believed it or not, and certainly he believed quite a bit of it because he had his run-ins with the Holy Roman Empire, but he preserved so much with that. And yeah, I mean, everybody should be grateful to the existence of those books. I'm totally with you on that. And I can see where like a very analytical mind, would definitely feel the appeal to his works. And he's such a fascinating figure on his own, but his books, whole other level. Other thoughts on that?
Oh, I think you hit it really well in that it's like, had he not taken the time to do this, this would not have been retained knowledge. Right. He did the same that like Grimm's fairy tales, right? They went and captured the stories that were oral traditions that never would have made it to the modern day, right? Like he that's his huge contribution. And as another author once put it, he's like, all like, especially once you hit like New Age, but like so much occultism is just remixing Agrippa. Like
100%.
Whether you want to take that as an insult or you want to take that as a compliment, that can vary depending on who we're talking about, but just so much stuff. If you just follow, where did this guy get his ideas from? You follow that thread back, it probably goes to Agrippa. It is like you cannot escape his influence for good or ill. And like I think there's a lot of not to crap on newer writers, not that they're not innovating at all, right? But there's just a lot of occult chaff that if you're like, what are these guys writing about? What are they talking about? And you're like, you know what? Save yourself the trouble. Go back, read Agrippa, and then come back and go, okay, here are the things I want to actually learn more about or see what other people have said on. And you can like target it instead of just all these rehashings of here's the big picture. And you're like, yeah, great. Thanks, buddy. Like, I don't need that, Go get yourself, I would like this one. Like I have, it's like annotated. Get an annotated copy. You can get, obviously all these books are public domain. You can get for free,
Yeah, I mean, because this is like 16th century stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, but get an annotated version to help you understand what the hell they're talking about. That because we're looking at it in a modern lens, right? Get an annotated version. Spend the couple of bucks, like, and you'll be filled with knowledge.
Yeah, no, I agree. So when people have asked me, I mean, if they ask me if they want to start, okay, I want to learn about Kabbalah. Like I have a different recommendation as far as books. If someone says like, I want to learn about mysticism or the occult, like where should I start? I'll admit I've often, recommended like Eliphas Levi's High Doctrines of Magic. And that's a 19th century work. So, 300 years, it's a little more relatable, I think. And I think I feel like the 3 books of philosophy are a little daunting, but I actually agree with you because so many, the metaphor I use, so many branches came out of that tree and basically so many people, even Eliphas Levi is remixing, what the fuck that Agrippa was laying down. I think that might be a great choice. to really kick off with. And it leads me to another question to you, which, you're talking about your path of getting interested and finding out about it in the first place, but then also getting interested in it, and arguably probably what led you to reading Agrippa's works is, you're learning about science and you keep going back, well, how'd they figure this out? How'd they do this? So, where did this come from? And you just keep going back. A common idea, let me lay it out this way. A common idea during the Enlightenment era was that the older the knowledge, the more true it is. Or if we were to use another term, the better it is. And I guess, how do you feel about that concept? I feel like Agrippa was kind of playing with that, no, the older the better. And I'm going to systematize it, and kind of put it all together. That's definitely a concept that's fallen away in modern science. No, we don't consider older physics, nobody considers ether, worthwhile to study anymore. And whether that's right or wrong is a whole other question. But I mean, how do you feel about that concept? Because it seems like that was your path, is you're like, no, the older the better. Do you agree? Do you more nuance? What do you got?
I don't necessarily know that stating it as older is better. I think it's more, to me, it's more about what influenced each person, right? And so naturally that's going to make you move down the timeline, right?
Right.
But I think some of the appeal to going older and older is eventually you're like, we don't even know who this guy was, right? The more anonymous the author is, the more you can just be like, I don't know, man, this just came into existence. Who are we to question this, right? And there's appeal there. Absolutely, right? That's not a problem. That's oh, this is nice. I don't have to worry about who the hell wrote this. He just wrote a cool thing. And then 700 years of people thought it was great. But I don't know that makes it better conceptually, or that we can't advance anything. I think you can take those old ideas and go, I have this radical new idea, and it might go, cool. The problem is not just modern, but I just mean in the current moment, then I would go, well, I don't know about Dr. Sovryn, and if I, it's attached to you, and therefore I have this extra interpretive layer, whether or not your idea was brilliant or not. And so I think that's the appeal of going older, is that it becomes more anonymous, and we can approach it with our own lens, our own intent, our own bias.
Yeah, that's an interesting point you're bringing up, because, and I don't know that I necessarily ever really considered that. When you go back far enough, what you're reading doesn't necessarily have to be colored by the writer, because you don't know who the hell the writer is. As to where, I've written and said plenty of things, but then people know who I am and they're like, well, fuck that guy.
Right.
We have the old adage of broken clocks. Go ahead.
Oh, the thing that pops into my head is something you said. So take the credit.
Okay.
I was ragging on some cryptocurrency, right?
Oh yeah.
And I was like, and we were in agreement. You're like, you only need one cryptocurrency. It's pointless to have more than one. And you said the reason Bitcoin is the best is because we don't know anything about who made it, right? That he's largely unknown and anonymous. There's no way he can be problematic and ruin it. All the other ones, we go, it was this guy. Maybe he was cool, maybe he wasn't, but it's still a guy, and you're gonna have feelings about that guy, and he's still alive and could pull a J.K. Rowling and turn into a transphobe, and then we will hate it. Right? You're like, Bitcoin is perfect because it isn't tied to some identity. It just exists.
Right.
Right? And that makes it good.
Yeah, and because it's not, because it has no agenda. I mean, we could say the white paper had an agenda or something, but we can't be certain necessarily of the agenda, and we can just take it on its own merits. And that's what I think you're hitting at, that is so great, because there's a common criticism And it's true in really any historical text, regardless of what the subject is about. But it's doubly true when it comes to religious, spiritual, occult, mystical texts, whatever, is it's super common to write something pseudonymously, meaning you attach, somebody of veneration, you attach their name to the text and you say, well, they wrote it, not me, they did, and you do that to it's like a band doing a cover song of a great song, even though they might do a shitty job with it. It's like, well, yeah, but you know the song, so why don't you listen? It's the same concept, but I think that maybe that's short selling some of the people who wrote pseudonymously. In that, no, maybe they were doing it because that way you would take the text on its own merits. You would take what they're
Right.
laying down. Just what does it say? Forget about who the hell wrote it necessarily. Okay. Or at least it wasn't me. And just take it for what it says. And I think that's a powerful thing to do. Like this power of pseudonymity and the ability to get away from it, having it have some kind of agenda that, or worried that it's coming from someone else's psychology, when you know them. I think there's something actually really powerful in that. Now, I'm sure plenty of other people have already thought about this, but you just made it sink in for me. That could be a very good thing, because I think like in Kabbalah, the primary text in that is the Book of Zohar, which gets attributed to Simon Bar Yochai, who was, a sage in like the early parts of CE, of the Common Era. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But other people say no, it was actually written by this guy in the 13th century. And so they actually, the sad part is a lot of people discredit it because they're like, well, it's claimed to be written by Shimon Bar Yochai, but it's actually written by whoever, Moses de Leon or something. And and that's a shame because he might have done it just so he could be like, no, look, all of this is like legit, but I just don't attach me to it because I'm an
Sure.
imperfect person or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, right. And the trick is, right, the is that if you write something in, especially in today's day and age, you write something anonymous, nobody's
Mm-hmm.
going to look at it. I'm going to write
Yeah,
this
no,
brilliant idea, put no name on it, and just stick it on a shelf somewhere and hope somebody sees it and thinks it's brilliant and spreads it around, right? So you're like,
right.
you can't just go, I have a brilliant idea, and somehow everyone will read it and know about it. You're like, yeah, it's really hard to do that. That's
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
therefore
So I could
we
see,
don't have
go ahead.
we don't have those new contributions with the same gravity.
Right. Right. And what a pity. Because yeah, I think that, like the and it's just easy to point at them because they were kind of a focal point, a bit of a nexus. But like the Enlightenment figures like Newton and others, they were able to look at these things with fresh, new eyes. They didn't have to look at it like, say, maybe the Romans did or something like that, because the Romans actually had some understanding of maybe who the person was, and they were just able to take it as it is and come up with all these just brilliant extrapolations from it all.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, that's really that's a fascinating point to bring up on this. Um, speaking of authorship, I don't is there more you want to get in about mysticism?
Oh golly. Oh, we've
I mean,
covered
we're
some
going to
good
do this
stuff.
again.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, but yeah, so yeah, I think we've covered like the thrust of my point in that like older
Mhm.
is interesting, but not necessarily better, right?
Right.
I will say I love a lot of old texts,
Yep.
and um, but I don't know that I would preclude newer ideas. I think there could be newer ideas. The problem is it's hard to find a fresh idea. Um, and I
Yeah.
think that a lot of that stuff is probably buried over in the neighborhood of chaos magic, right?
Yes.
There's
Yep.
probably people, who in enough time we're gonna go, wow, this school of thought right here absolutely blew me out of the water, right? But nobody's reading
Sure.
it right now. It's not hasn't been spread around enough, right? I'm sure there are people coming up with interesting new ideas. It's just tough to find out about them.
Yeah.
Right now it's too siloed or it's too noisy, and you can't find those gems.
Yeah, you can't find the signal. I mean, that was like Agrippa's kind of where he lucked out. No one else was putting this stuff together. No one else
Yep.
was writing this shit. And so yeah, so his 3 books become, the standard for so long. Yeah, okay. So actually there is one last question I want to get to you.
Okay.
And that is as a learned man. Uh you know, I mean, like what credit do you give, shall we say, to in whatever term you're comfortable with, occultism, spirituality, mysticism, whatever. Like, what credit do you give to some of this stuff? Do you think about, some of what Agrippa was laying out, that science is not bothering to explore for varying reasons? That there's something there, that it's legit, that maybe there's an interior science that hasn't been explored yet. I mean, what do you get what I mean?
Sure. I I think at the end of the day, the like a truth I go back to is that, okay, we have, I have my rational scientific world filled with mysteries that we don't
Hmm.
all understand yet, but that it exists, and here I am in it, and that the if the miracle of consciousness is a emergent phenomenon of the universe, right?
Hmm.
That like me being a conscious person is something that is an emergent property of the laws of the universe, then why would I necessarily draw the line there? There, right?
Interesting.
That there isn't an other odd phenomenon. And
Yeah.
so, um, I say all that being not to like look down on all these historical works I've read, right? But I don't necessarily go, yep, earth elementals are gnomes, and that's the truth,
Right.
right? Like I'm like, I don't subscribe to that necessarily.
Hmm.
But I love, learning to think is reading these things, right? Like,
Right.
I'll read all of them and understand them and learn about how they think, and that is useful to me. Um, and so, um, so I guess I'm way more off on the side of being like, closer to just being a hippie, world soul, kind of guy, I guess is where I'm ending up, like
Sure. Sure.
that because I'm following, if that's my line of reasoning, right? To
Hmm.
go, okay, um, like how could I be so, I feel like, how could I be so naive to say there couldn't be other emergent phenomena of the universe that does not uh betray, that can still be true in my rational universe?
Right. Right. It's just not measurable yet,
Yeah, like,
perhaps.
yeah, like there could be, you're like, okay, so then is divinity, the Godhead, the demiurge, an emergent property of the universe, right? Like there
Uh-huh.
is a galactic consciousness or something, like, um okay,
Well, I love what you right. I love what you're saying here, because you're actually, a super important scientific concept, that being emergence, right? Meaning that something is greater than the sum of its parts. Like something is capable of doing something that if you just looked at what it's made up of, why would it suddenly be able to do that? That doesn't make any sense, right? That's basically emergence, if I got that right.
yeah, absolutely right. You look
Yeah.
at atoms and protons and electrons, and you wouldn't necessarily go, these
Hmm.
could turn into an atom, right? Like, I don't know, they repel each other and
Right.
all this other. You're like, and then all of a sudden you got an atom. You're like, whoa, that's an emergent property. And
Right.
then you throw some more atoms together, and you've got molecules. And you're like, whoa, where's all this coming from? And you just like keep
Yeah,
building up.
exactly.
Next thing
Yeah.
you know, you have a thinking person.
Right. Yeah. Some more than others. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I love this because it's something that I think gets ignored a lot. Is okay, we can measure this, measure that, measure this, but I love the way that you're bringing up, okay, some of this phenomena might be possible, and it's possible because of emergent properties, because of the very concept of emergence. And that's something I don't hear often, that I think, even some people maybe on shows like Ancient Aliens would do well to mention every once in a while, and they don't. but no, that's good. Like I really like where you're going with that, because you're still bringing the science in and showing where, there's times where something kind of leaps beyond what we consider logical, and we have a process for that. We understand why that, or at least we understand the process of why that happens, and that's wild to consider. I dig it.
Yeah, yeah, and so the place, I guess, where my thinking falls short, right? As like and I'm saying this as like for like the scientific side of me of going, okay, well, if that's true, then what's the next conclusion? What's the hypothesis? What's the next thing, right? And I'm going, yeah, okay, I guess I haven't gotten that far yet. Right? Like, okay, consciousness is an emergent property, so there must be other things. Okay, like what? Yeah, that's a great question, sir.
Yeah, right. Well, that's when
Yeah,
you get to say the greatest scientific, yeah, you get to make the most, accurate scientific statement of all time, which is, I don't know.
right.
Like that's the best thing you can say.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So, there are multitudes probably that exist. I don't know that I would ascribe a whole lot to it. Like if I were to just flip it and describe it from like a more something that's more couched in like a religious mystic language, right? The way that when I'm asked, I would say that I'm an apophatic deist. Um, and I could just say, go look those words up on your own, readers at home, and come up with what you think that means. But the essentially what I'm saying is that right, being the deist thinking is that you're like, okay, fine, God exists, but he has nothing to do with what we are. He does not conduct miracles. I'm saying he, but whatever, right? Like it does not intercede in our mortal lives. And apophatic is
the absentee landlord, the blind watchmaker. Yeah.
Go
for it.
The unmoved mover, right? My favorite phrase goes back to like the Greeks, which is the demiurge. Right? Like there was like creation, and then it was like, yeah, but it's not like an entity desiring of worship.
Right.
And the apophatic component is that whatever the divine or whatever the other is cannot be described in human terms. We can only describe it in the negative. So to say that whatever this other is, it loves. There is no human concept we can apply to it. To say that it cares, to say that it thinks, to say that it, right? None of those apply. We can only say what it is not. And that's how I would describe, like, what do I mean by there's if consciousness is an emergent property and there's probably I think I can conclude that there are other things. Okay, how would you describe that other thing? I would describe that as apophatic deism.
Right. Yeah, I love that. It's the nothingness with a capital N. Yeah, I'm with you on that. I like that a lot. Apophatic deism. I think you just started a trend, my friend, with that term. Well, something that I don't think is part of the apophatic deism, we're going to shake things up a little bit here.
Okay.
That would be AI. I don't think this is not something I mean, like I love that you brought up emergence, and I guess if I want to be if I wanted to be perfectly consistent, I shouldn't say that, putting a bunch of, processors and metal and electricity together and everything, that somehow couldn't create something that we didn't anticipate. But I'm a little harder when it comes to that which is made of metal. But I could be wrong about that, I suppose, if I wanted to be perfectly honest. But I'm of the school, or of the opinion, is what I mean by that. I'm of the opinion, yeah, no, this idea of AGI, of an, artificial general intelligence or super intelligence, from coming out of, from our hands and, our machinations and literal machinations, I just don't see that ever happening. But it's, we do have some form of AI, a very narrow AI, that does exist, and honestly is flooding the fuck out of every entertainment channel we have, every communication channel we have. I mean, I think that's fair. And, as we get flooded with all of this crap, in fact, I mean, I'm honestly to the point that I think a lot of scripts, Hollywood scripts of movies that have already been made, I'm of the firm belief, I think a lot of those scripts were completely not written by humans. I think they were written by AI, because it's one, sure, everything's a remix, but like some things are remixed just like you can see it's not enough. I don't know.
Yep.
So yeah, it's bad.
It's bad. It's bad.
Yeah. And when I see all of this, the thing that comes to me is, man, I want to go and see really, really live entertainment. Like I feel like this is the response to being flooded with, the ultra remixes of AI, that's all around us. And I got to admit, for myself, well, let me ask this first. Okay. I mean, so you seem to agree with my assessment here. Do you feel like do you feel like AGI is something that's on the way that we're just going to have to deal with in the next 4 years? What are your thoughts on that, quick?
AGI is,
it's just toss in your hand.
It's, I think that maybe someday we'll get there. I don't think it's waiting to happen right now.
Sure.
We are, the technologies going on right now are not AGI, right? I think that the biggest thing we could all do right now is develop better words to describe all the things we're talking about.
Right.
Because AI is so overused, we may as well just go back to talking about computers.
Yeah.
I think computers might do this. Like, just call it computers, because you've so overused AI.
Yeah.
To mean way too many things. Stop even using that word. Just say computers, unless you're going to be specific, right?
Right.
Which isn't directed at you, right? But is like in the general discourse. Anytime you start talking about one element of it, you have to you have to put in all of your asterisk caveats to go, I'm not talking about that kind of AI. I'm not talking about this type of computational model. I'm not talking about, and it's because the term is overbroad, so like you'll be like, yeah, so I'm going to use AI to do this and other thing, and you'll be like, generative AI is stealing artists, and I go, I agree with you, and they go, then how could you be talking positively about AI? And I go, I'm sorry, let's just say computer.
Yeah.
Because
so you're raising a phenomenal point. And you and I are both gentlemen. Well, that might be a little kind, but we're both gentlemen with some gray in our beards. Okay.
Yes.
And
thank you.
Yeah, and I love it too. So, but I don't think people remember what it was like. And this was true from, honestly, the late 60s, the 70s, into the 90s, and maybe even into the early aughts. They don't remember that, like, when you were watching a documentary or even a TV show, like I can remember episodes of like Linda Carter's Wonder Woman, from the 70s, where, there were times where it's like, well, we'll run this through a computer, or well, the computer says this, and like anything they needed to solve, like you just kind of put in the term computer. Or if you're watching documentaries, it's like, and while using, computers to analyze this sound, this sound is something that couldn't exist anywhere else, or something like
Right.
they would just throw this term around all the time. Like, well, they used a computer.
It's a computer.
So it must be true. It must be real. It's a computer, and sooner or later, computers became so ubiquitous that, okay, people realize how nonsensical that was. To just say like, "Ooh, it went through a computer. I've got a computer on my desk too. So what?" You know what I mean? But you're right. AI is being tossed around today, just like that. Just like the term computer used to be. It was supposed to impress you somehow and make something more real.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think once you get past the marketing hype of Silicon Valley, I think a lot of people are realizing, and there's actually research to back this up that wasn't done by AI, by the way, that people like get it. They know, like, no, this is kind of bullshit. And when you encounter that, again, and this gets back to the point that I want to get to is, I think you have a real desire for the random, and for the live experience. Now, Mrs. Sovryn and I, we go to metal concerts and concerts, all the time. I've actually kind of run into a bit of a problem with concerts, and I won't take long explaining this, but in that, and it's not because, musicians use backing tracks and listeners can go and look up what backing tracks are, but everything has become like, part of it is because they are using backing tracks. So everything has become so timed that you're not really seeing a live experience, because everything has to be perfect. They can't take the time to react to the crowd. They can't make mistakes, which is part of the beauty of seeing something live. But there's not a lot of real crowd interaction, which is the point of live entertainment, in my opinion. And so even concerts, in some senses, depending upon the act, have become kind of boring. Now, there's great live acts, live bands out there that have a following, where people will go wherever, and they're basically like mini cults going around, like King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard, some bullshit like that.
Yeah, or Fish.
Great example. And that's actually a group I like. But they're basically mini cults going around, and that's fine.
It's fine.
Yeah, right. But this kind of entertainment, this kind of live where anything can happen, I think is really going to grow in prominence. And I don't just think that it's going to grow in prominence. I think it's necessary. I mean, how do you feel about that whole analysis, BP?
I think that is, I agree with you is the short answer.
Sure.
Right? Is that, like a piece of entertainment that I really enjoy, that AI will never touch, right, is watching Taskmaster, the British comedy series.
Oh, yeah.
He gives them strange tasks, and then humans have to take a very silly idea seriously. And you're like, the emergent situation is hilarious and unscripted. And brilliant. It's just hilarious, and you're like, you that is never going to turn into the band with a backing track that's perfect, right? Like that is always going to be organic. And so to like and through watching that, and seeing people struggle or like, do genuine human things, you have this connection to them, and you're like, that's what I was looking for. Right. And you're like, and to your point about the concerts, you're like, if I wanted animatronics, I'd go to Chuck E. Cheese.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Like at what point do they just become human animatronics?
Right.
If they're tied to their script or their program.
Yeah, exactly. Because I mean, like we've been to some concerts recently. I mean, the crowd is so fucking into it. They are chanting the band's name. They are like laying it out. And the band can't spare an extra minute to interact with the crowd about that. You know what I mean? Like they can't, because the backing track, the song, they got to move. We got to go. We got to get through this set. We got to do. And it's just like, God damn it, man. You know, like, no, 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 no. Like, let's have the exchange. I paid money to have an exchange with you, you know, of some kind. And, you know, I never really, and I'm not just saying this to like promote you. Okay. Because here's the thing. You are a master of this. Okay. And I'm going to give you the chance to promote yourself, but
Okay.
you are a master of this. In that I went and saw you, and of course Ellen was there as well. You know, we saw you do Dorks and Dungeons, right?
Correct.
And you're basically doing, you know, like you're breaking out your best occult hats and playing, you know, Satan worship and playing Dungeons and Dragons on stage.
Yes.
Okay. But like you're interacting with the audience, you know, and I mean, tell me about this. Like it was so cool, even though, you know, Ellen and I were in the nosebleeds, you know, because even though we're great friends with you, you can't give us good seats. But no, okay. We're in the nosebleeds, so it's not like we exactly, you know, I mean, like you give people these chips to change the dice roll or something, and you know, I'm having to like pretend I'm Nolan Ryan and, you know, trying as hard as I fucking can, but my arm's gonna fall off. But whatever, okay. So, it's fine. I live with it. Made it a sporting event, you know. But anyway, so but I mean, people like I felt like it was a pretty full house, and people are just laughing their asses off and having this amazing time. Netflix is never going to be able to provide this experience. You know, no AI is going to give you anything fucking close. I mean, just the pure randomosity of what you're doing it was so wildly entertaining. I mean, tell me about what you do on stage.
Right, yeah, the magic of what we do on stage for the viewers at home, right, we're doing an improvised comedy show using the framing device of tabletop role-playing games and nerdy shit like that. And you know, so we're inventing scenes and problems, and these characters are on this journey, and we are allowing for dice rolling to influence how that goes. We don't know what's going to happen. And then we go, okay, but that's not chaotic enough. We also have the audience, who are their own thinking individuals, can decide to force us to re-roll the dice. So nothing's a guarantee, even once we've done that, right? The audience
Right.
can dictate that. And then in addition, we will solicit suggestions and information from the audience to add to our narrative. And then in addition to that, some audience members, unprompted, will interject additional information by just shouting at us. And that also becomes, you know, input into this insanity of a machine, of this, you know, shared, you know, we're all in this like heightened state of a shared mind following a storyline. And the final like cream on the cake or whatever, right? The icing on top is that all of us performers, and plus the audience, the thing we're doing that no computer can do is we're doing the human ability to free associate. That we can take an idea, we can take a word, we can take an emotion, and then go, in my human experience, go, this is reminding me of this other thing. And so
Right.
I'm about to, you know, sort of take a turn, but not a non sequitur necessarily, but just incorporate a whole new idea into what's happening, subtly or overtly, to continue fueling this in a way that I wasn't expecting, nobody else was expecting, right? And everyone on stage is working in the same way of pulling in this lateral thinking that humans, you know, is this amazing gift that we have in our brains.
Right.
Right, fueling that in, and then that's like on top of all these other just crazy inputs into that system that we're then taking and going, what else, right? And then driving that towards a story, and everybody loves a story, right? And so then that is
Yes.
the sausage that gets made is a story.
I mean, it's awesome, and even I love how, there was a point where one of the I guess I'll say cast members, like like tripped over something that was on the stage, like some column that was right there, like just all these mistakes that can happen. And because like when I go to a rock show, like that's part of what I want to see. I want to see the mistakes happen. It's like when you go to a wrestling show, which might be, in my opinion, regardless of what it's like today, in the abstract, might be one of the penultimate forms of entertainment, because you have to have so much ability, and it can be shown through athleticism in this case, perhaps not so much through storytelling, though there's your own story you can tell through your body. But you're always, when you're like a mark, what they call a mark, you're always looking for like the mistake, like, oh, was that supposed to happen or wasn't that supposed to happen? And that's actually the fun of the experience. Yeah, getting lost in what's being done and the action and all that. Okay, that's nice. But ultimately, the intelligent person is going, well, wait, what's real and what's not, and I think very much you're playing with that, where like so much can just go wrong, which creates a whole other heightened tension, right? Because that's a big problem that I think anything that AI generates runs into, is like it's always playing it safe. Always. I mean, yeah, it can tell you things that are wrong, but it's confidently wrong. Like, and that's the thing. That confidence is like the safety net. That's always such a problem. It's like, no, I want you to screw up. I do want you to screw up. I want you to like do something you weren't meant to do. I want all of this. And yeah, I think we very much define ourselves by how much we fuck up. And you guys you guys and gals are just on stage and you're fucking up all over the place. And it's so cool.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Like improv in general, right? If you like zoom out slightly to just
Yes.
kind of improv philosophy, the right, nothing is a mistake. Everything that happens is just incorporated into the narrative, and some of the best improv you will see is mistake. It's essentially like everything becomes canonical, right? And so this mistake is now canonical. And there's been, I think there's like actually a Netflix special where they like filmed some people doing improv. I can't think of the name of it right now, but there's like a hilarious, yeah, I wish I could remember it. But in any case, they're playing these characters and they're cycling through the characters, and one of them comes out and they're like, "Oh, hey, I'm sorry, what was your name again?" And they're like, "Oh, Stephanie." And it was definitely not Stephanie, right? Like that character's name was something completely different. And the other actor remembers the name and goes, "Wasn't it Jennifer?" And he goes, "Yes, but my nickname is Stephanie." And you're like, it's hysterical because they commit to that. They're like, and for the rest of the show, that character is Stephanie Jennifer. Right? Like it's a mistake. And in that case, it was a very obvious mistake. And they just went, no, this is a truth. There was not a mistake. Right. And so zooming back into like our show of yeah, nothing, everything is true, everything is happening. And by adding in this like dice rolling thing where we're like, things go wrong sort of purposefully as like a notion of the show, that things go wrong for these characters, in addition to the chaos of improv inevitably resulting in a mistake that also just gets fed into the same machine of this is all true. um and it's just like a magical experience to perform that. And you're just trying to collect all the information and you're just trying to synthesize it. You're like, it's the ultimate exercise in the notion of syncretism, of like, you cannot, no matter what you build from, you cannot end up with a contradiction. um right?
Yeah.
Like that's what we're doing on stage. That's what we're doing is exploring that idea of how can this all be true.
Yeah, I love it. And this is kind of a prediction I have. And I think this is a conversation you and I are going to have a lot more because again, I think this is only going to grow because I don't think, the narrow AI that we have, however it's being implemented, I don't think it's going anywhere. Like, I mean, sure, OpenAI may, shutter up, next year because it runs out of money or something, or who knows
Right.
what'll happen. But itself, generative AI, it's not going anywhere. Google's going to throw all their money and everything they can at it to make sure it keeps going, blah, blah, blah. So I don't see it going anywhere. But I'm reminded, did you ever see Peter Jackson's King Kong from 2005?
I might have. That was a long time ago.
Yeah. Jack Black was in it and some other,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
actually, I think it's an amazing movie. I know not
Okay.
everybody's a fan. I love the shit out of it. And the video game was great too, which at the time you couldn't say that often about movie video games. But
Yeah.
anyway, in that movie, part of the kind of the opening premise of a lot of what's going on in it is this gal who ends up being, the blonde that King Kong famously carries off with, whatever. She works in vaudeville. But she works in vaudeville at a time when the motion picture is becoming a thing. And so vaudeville is dying. And what's ironic to me is that in almost the exact time frame of a century, in almost 100 years, so basically like, kind of approaching 1930 to 2030, something within that range, I feel like basically vaudeville is going to come back, and we've come full circle to where the motion picture or whatever it takes shape as on a streaming service or something has just become so clean, so rote, so banal, or banal as it's supposed to be pronounced. I just like banal better. It's so banal and so boring ultimately, and so inhuman that people are going to want to go to these kinds of events like what you're putting on, and go to go to these kinds of experiences. I mean, the streaming services are seeing it already. The only thing that keeps people subscribed is, something that's like literal live content, like, football or some other kind of sports ball nonsense. Um, and yeah, I think people are going to be so ridiculously hungry for this, and they don't even know it yet. But it's going to be there. Like, I think TikTok's kind of scratching the itch a little bit, maybe.
Yes.
I don't know. I'm not on there, but I think it's scratching the itch. But like, eventually, people are going to be like, no. I want to get into a room where there's, some incredibly hairy guy like BP up on the
Thank you.
stage doing insane things, and and they get to interact, right there. And holy shit, it's cheaper than going to the movies, So,
Yeah.
yeah. So, I mean, how do you feel about that analysis? Do you see that coming true as well?
I certainly hope that is true.
Sure.
Yeah, like I think that is a ideal that I hope for.
Mm-hmm.
And it is, like so many human endeavors, it's a fight against laziness.
Yes.
And caveat, that is not a new problem, right? We love to go,
Right.
people are lazy these days. No, people have been lazy
Always.
since we crawled out of the dirt, okay?
Yes.
Why did we start building houses? Because we didn't like to dry off in the rain, right? We were fucking lazy. Right? Like it's all an effort to be more lazy. It
Yes.
is, right? We're just wired that way. It's fine.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying laziness is a new problem, but that's the thing to overcome for anything is
Mhm.
people are lazy. I'm a lazy person. How do we get them to realize what they want is live entertainment?
Right.
Right? Like I think yeah, like I think people already realize they're bored with their entertainment. Um, but is it too inconvenient to go the thing that will bring you the endorphins, the happiness, the human connection, all of these things is getting out of your house for 2 hours
Yeah.
on a
Yeah.
weeknight, right? Like on a Wednesday night, you are going to be so happy. It's okay that you get to bed 30 minutes late. Like
Yeah. Right.
genuinely, um, it'll improve your life, right? Like me going out and performing these shows, right? Like my body chemistry, like probably if we were taking blood samples or something, right? Like my vitals would probably, right? Like show just a marked improvement. You'd be like,
Yeah.
whoa, what super drug are you taking? And you're like, performance and human connection. And look
Right.
how good I am. Look how like all these good things are happening. And I think the same is
Right on.
happening for the audience.
Yes.
Um, and so it's just like, hey man, get out there, see something. Doesn't have to be my show. Go, like people think of live entertainment and go, Shakespeare? I don't get it. And you're like,
Right.
dude, there's so much more than that. The only time you've been to a live performance was like a high school play. And
Yeah.
I mean, go see a high school play. Support local art.
No, they can be great.
Yeah. So like,
Yeah.
but if that's all you've ever seen, you haven't scratched the surface.
Right.
Try out some
Right.
things, in the same way that you might be like, gosh, I don't know, what kind of concerts would I like? And you might go to a heavy metal concert and go, wasn't my vibe. Guess I'm not into concerts. You go, you understand there are many kinds of concerts, right?
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of different levels to this. Yeah.
Right? Like that's like live entertainment, outside of just concerts, right? It's like go find the thing
Yeah.
you want, and you
Yeah, I
probably
think
will be fulfilled.
no, right on. And I think part of it is like people just don't know. I mean, how many years have you been doing Dorks and Dungeons?
That
Because it's
show
been years,
specifically,
right?
yeah, we might be up to like 10 years.
Amazing, man. Yes.
Yeah.
And you travel like you do multiple venues. Like you're not just in one spot. So
Yep.
you kind of do New England decently,
Yeah,
or
like it depends on the era of the show we're talking about.
sure.
At various points we've kind of settled in at different venues in
Yep.
the area, and then we'll kind of get restless and do shows elsewhere.
Hmm.
And right now we're in more that phase of things where we're kind of going around New Hampshire to a few different venues, just kind of feeling it out. So, and then we also go to Canada and perform.
Oh, right on.
So yeah, I'm an international performer. Uh, when you
Grab all
realize,
those terms, man.
oh
Yes.
man, yeah, once you realize like marketing up talk of like technically
Yep.
I'm an international performer, and all of a sudden people go, whoa, and you're like, yeah, I went
Yeah,
to
right.
Halifax,
Yeah.
which is just
Oh hell, I do it all
Boston
the
but
time.
cleaner.
Yeah. Yeah,
Like,
right. And nicer people.
and
Yeah,
nicer people. Yeah.
no, so but that's it. I think people just don't know this stuff exists. And again, I mean, I know plenty of people know about you, but I'm just saying that like, you've been doing it for 10 years, and that's really the key. And you were doing this well before generative AI was any kind of like threat to entertainment,
Yep.
and that's it. So like in one sense, I'm really glad to like help get that out there, because I mean, this is the kind of, I'm all about, as much as there are many positive things with generative AI, the last place I really want it to be is writing my movies. But it seems like I'm not going to be able to avoid that for much longer, it would appear, and who knows how long even movies will get made. So, and my concerts are, on a sliding scale of impressiveness to, to pure shit. So I need something. And
Yeah.
what you do is the kind of stuff I want. I mean, really, that's it.
Yeah, like one thing that pops into my right, you're like all these metal bands that you love, and you go and see them, and they've got their backing tracks, and it's boring. It makes you. It's like, I wonder if there's a local metal band who
Right.
couldn't possibly afford a backing track and all this nonsense,
Right.
right? And you go, maybe I should go here and maybe they're doing covers and playing the songs but maybe they're doing original work. But either way, you're going to get that experience of seeing them yell at you or kick over an amp or like all the like human element. And you're like, yeah, if they don't have my favorite song from, whatever big metal band, but I got such an authentic experience that was so rewarding. And then it's like, you're like, and then also that band is going, wow, we have local fans. Isn't this fun? Right? Like, and you're getting and all of a sudden it's like, right? I guess what I'm getting to is being like anti-capitalist, which I am anyway, but like I'm just
Right on.
but just being like, fuck these bands or any media franchise has become such a
Yep.
brand that you
Yep.
can't enjoy it anymore.
Yep.
You know, like so how do you fight against that? Go to your local metal band, go to your local
Yeah.
country band, insert any genre, insert any theater. I really like this type of entertainment. Find a
Yep.
local version, and they will probably be thrilled to have you. You will be thrilled to be there. Like,
Yes.
uh, you know what I mean? It's a
No,
win-win.
I think I think you're hitting it exactly. Like, how do you get started with this? Is just look up the local venues themselves first. Look up the small venues. And I mean, here's the thing, even, big acts, one of the best concerts I've ever been to in my life was Whitesnake playing at Hampton Beach. Now, the
Hmm.
Casino Ballroom is famous, but it's tiny. I mean, it
Sure.
is tiny. Okay, so you can't get away with a whole lot there. But is a pretty good bet what you're going to see is pretty fucking live, and
Yep.
it was, and it was an amazing night. So yeah, find those little venues, even if they're famous. I mean, they might be famous for a reason, and stop, maybe so much looking for the big, the big Gillette stadiums and whatever else. I think that's the way to get started. Even if you don't know what you're looking for, just look for the venues first and then see what's there.
Yep.
I think that's the great way to go. Um, Man, and now, so BP, so we're going to wrap this one up.
Okay.
And where can people find out more about you, Dorks and Dungeons, all that jazz? You got a good URL to get out there?
Dorksanddungeons.com.
Beautiful.
Is that'll we've actually we've talked about this before, right? Of
Yep.
the wasted effort of websites.
Yes.
So
That's a conversation I want to have at some point. Go ahead.
okay.
Yes.
So I'll give the succinct version, which is that we basically dumped the entire website. If you go
Yep.
to if you go to that URL now, it'll take you to like a link tree, and then that'll send you over to like our Instagram,
Yep.
and I'm sure there's some other things I'm not thinking of, right? But like we have some social media pages and whatnot, and follow us on those places. That's where we're going to post information about anything that we're doing, where our content is going to be, that kind of a thing, right? Like I said, this year we've been kind of taking it easy a little bit, so we're not super active online right now.
Mhm.
It's again a big capitalism thing of being like generate that content, it's essentially
Right.
the drive to monetize your hobby.
Yeah.
Right.
Story
Which
of my life.
right, which isn't for those who can do it and still enjoy their hobby. I have mad respect for, right?
Yes.
Like that's what I'm getting at is like if you can do it, man, mad respect. But you don't, but like don't think everyone has to, right? Is like the
Yeah.
counterpoint of like
Yeah.
and so we do this show because it brings us joy and we bring other people joy. It's artistically fulfilling, and so therefore we sometimes take a break, and we've been told by venues and other people like you guys are terrible. You're terrible. You don't have you don't have the right chops to do this. And it's like we've been performing consistently for 10 years, right?
Yeah.
We've done hundreds and hundreds of performances. We've performed for thousands of people. We're fine. We're fine. But they're coming at it from you didn't make me $5,000 in a night, the venue,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
So get fucked. Meanwhile, us and our audience are happy as can be.
Yeah,
And we're
having the
like,
time of your life. Yeah,
right.
exactly.
So you can find us online. We may not always be saying a whole lot because we don't give a fuck about the algorithm.
I agree. Look, I've had to deal with this, man. Like I wasn't on social media for years. Ellen and I, we weren't on social media for years. But like people think you're dead if you're not
Yeah.
posting shit. And it's like, no, man. Like I'm living. It's actually the exact opposite. If I'm not posting, it's because I'm fucking alive. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And yeah, people just they don't get it. And like because you don't want to be in the grind and like be posting more content all the time. I mean, oh, give me a goddamn break. So I mean,
Yep.
that's actually the reason more that I would go and follow people, is because when they do have something important to say, they're going to say it, and I want to make sure I get it. You know what I mean?
Yep.
But and I agree with you on the Linktree thing too. Like, I've totally gone to that, because it's all digital hopscotch as far as platforms go. So just give a fucking list of links, and like, otherwise, I don't know. It's digital masturbation otherwise. So not that I'm against that.
Yeah, right.
Anyway. Right. Yeah. So anyway, all right. So dorksandungeons.com. That's where people can get more of your gloriousness. And all right. So yeah, BP, like, in fact, I gotta have you in the studio.
Sure.
Because, I mean, that brings on like an even more intense energy. But I love it. You're one of the people where, like, I feel like I can just say anything. Like, it just doesn't fucking matter. And I know it goes vice versa. And just a brilliant guy. So I appreciate you being on Real-Time Sovryn. You're in the single digits of, like, initial guests. Like, I haven't had, you're like number 3, in fact.
Wow.
I know.
I'm honored. I am.
Yeah. So, and we're going to have you on more. I know you're going to do more, and we've got some great shit to get into.
Happy to.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah, everybody hit up dorksandungeons.com. Of course, where you can find more of me. Not that there's any centerfolds or anything. Please remove the staple marks from my stomach if you do, though. And and we will see all of you on the other side.